Hello everyone, in this video we are going to cover the remaining area of the receivables management chapter of the working capital area of FM syllabus. So let's start with that. If you come to the page number 44, we have got our next topic, which is external debt collection and finance. We have already learned a lot about management of receivables, and we also saw a few examples in the last video. Uh, when it comes to receivable management, there are certain external help available for management of receivables. These are factoring, invoice discounting, and credit insurance. Let's look at them in turn. First, we have got factoring. Now, factoring is an arrangement in which a specialist trade collection agency takes over the receivables and bills the client and recovers the amount on the business's behalf. That's what is basically what the arrangement is like, outsourcing the receivables management to a third party. Let's look at the description over here. Factoring, also known as accounts receivable financing, is an arrangement in which specialist trade debt management and collection company recovers some payable by the client's customers on client's behalf. They will not go and tell the client we are coming from this company and just give us the money, or it's obvious that the client will be reluctant to do that. They will be doing all that on the client's behalf. The types of services offered by Factor are as follows. There are basically two types of services which are offered by Factor, which the first is administrative and collection, and the second is Factor financing. Administrative and collection is further subdivided into two: recourse and non-recourse finance factoring. First, let's look at the administrative and collection area. It involves handing over the complete sales ledger and invoice and debt collection. In this arrangement, whole of the receivables collection, follow-up, invoicing goes to the factor. It will manage all those things. Now, this arrangement is of two types: recourse and non-recourse. With recourse factoring, the factor will not bear the loss of any irrecoverable debt. If the bad debt happens in the recourse, the factor will not bear the loss and will tell you that these are the clients which have not paid and you have to bear the loss for them. Whereas in non-recourse, the factor will in fact bear the loss of any irrecoverable debt, but will charge additional premium for this service. Due to the reduced risk of bad debts, non-recourse factoring is expensive than recourse. Then we have got factor financing. Here the factor becomes the financer for the company by paying the company up to 80% of the value of the debt, and in return charges 1.5 to 3% above the bank base rate as a finance cost. Here it's like the securitization of the receivables. You simply are putting receivable as a security to a factor, and the factor on behalf of those receivables is giving you 80% of the total amount that is receivable by your company. Obviously, since it's a financing arrangement, so the factor will charge cost for it. It's like treatment of debt, and it will be around 1.5 to 3% above the base rate, which is LIBOR. Then we have got the format. Just like all the formats I've told you about in the last video, they are flexible. They can include or exclude according to the questions. First, we have got the benefit arising from factoring. Decrease in finance costs due to less cash tied in working capital, that will be our benefit. Decrease in bad debts, since we do not have to administer the receivables, so this is our saving. Decrease in bad debt, in case of non-recourse, it's bad debt saving, so that's also our benefit. Then we have got the cost arising from factoring. First of all, the factoring fee, which is quite a huge sum, so that's our cost. Additional interest cost of factor financing. If it's a financing arrangement which I've just told you about, then additional financing will needs to be taken into account as a part of a cost. It becomes a relevant cost. Decrease in contribution or profit, if any, so this will also become part of a cost. And one-off payment, some factor in it requires a one-off payment, so that will also become our cost. And just like in the discount, the benefit has to justify itself by passing over all the costs. So the arrangement to be accepted by the company, to become acceptable by the management, there are certain assumptions as well. If annual payments take in full charge, if only one-off payment, then charge lost interest because of one-off payment made. We will be learning about that in an example. In fact, let's just do the example. We have got an example over here of Henry Co. planning to hand over its sales ledger administration to a factor on non-recourse basis. This will result in a bad debt saving of $30,000 and admin cost saving of $40,000. The existing sales, which will remain unchanged, is $600,000. The current receivable days are 40 and the factor will reduce these days to 10. No factor financing is available and the current overdraft rate is 5%. Take a decision whether or not to opt for the factor services if the factor fees is 1% of the turnover. We all now know the performer. First, we need to look at the benefit. Bad debt savings. Then we have decrease in admin cost, which was 40,000. Decrease in finance cost. We will be doing that in a working. It must have been apparently clear by now that when it comes to finance costs, we use the receivables formula when it comes to the receivable management, and we use that formula to take out the difference and apply the overdraft rate to get to the finance cost. And the cost for this is factor fee, which is 600,000 multiplied by 1%. It becomes 6,000, taking it as a negative. Now let's do the working. First, we need to compute the current receivables. "40 days we are assuming there are 365 days in a year. This becomes 65753, and after the proposal we are computing proposed receivables. Becomes 10 days. The remainder remains the same. One, 6, 4, 3, 8. The difference is 49315. The overdraft rate is 5% as per the example, so this becomes 2466. This is our decrease in finance cost. In the example, don't use the short form. 2466, and if we compute this, subtracting 6000 will give us 66,466. That's our benefit of factor financing, of factoring arrangement. So the company should opt for factoring because it's giving us a lot of benefit in terms of savings. Coming back to our notes. Now there are certain advantages of factoring. The company cash flow position is improved as company received 80% financing within a day. Let's look at the advantages. First, we have the company's cash flow position is improved as company received 80% financing within a day. Now, the second type of arrangement which we just covered in factor financing, the company can get the finance which is stuck in its receivables immediately. As a result, it can either invested or recirculated in its own business cycle. So that's an advantage for the company. Easy to obtain finance. The cash is not locked in the receivables. Then we have got the company can keep optimum inventory levels, allowing growth in sales. Because of the factoring arrangement, the company has obtained the finance. It can use it to purchase the supplies and continue with the cash operating cycle, which will obviously, as the cycle moves faster, it will generate more sales and as a result more revenue. The company will save in admin costs by outsourcing as part of a benefit of factoring, which we have just done, and also observed in the example that it saves admin and bad debt cost. So that's also our advantage. And the last is the same, savings in irrecoverable debts. That's become the that problem becomes the responsibility of the factor. Then we've got certain disadvantages of factoring. Factor can upset customers as factor does not intervene between the client. The factor does intervene between the client and the customer. Remember, they will be knocking at the door of your clients on your behalf. Their rude behavior or their aggressive style of recovery, which is standard expectations from a factor, might irritate your customers and will result in loss of goodwill. The customer might not be willing to do business again with you. Then we have got the company loses the decision power over whom should be allowed credit and actions against non-payment. This can affect the company's image in the perception of the customers, who can decide not to continue with the company. As I've just told you, the decision power is sublet, you can say, is delegated to the factor. As a result, they decide what actions should be taken against non-payment and whom should they allow credit and whom should not. So they are not only intervening, but they are like operating the receivable entirely on their own discretion. They do not understand the dynamics of our business. So as a result, they might deter some of the customers from not doing business with us again. Then we have got the company's financial stability might be questioned by suppliers and customers. One of the signaling effect to the potential stakeholders in a company that are suppliers and customers of factor financing is that they believe that the company cannot manage itself, or the company is in financial difficulty to go to the extent of factoring rather than managing its own business. Then we have got the second arrangement, which is invoice discounting. Now, invoice discounting is an alternate method to factoring to raise finance. Let's read out. It's same as factoring with only one major difference in invoice discounting. The invoice discounter does not retain the control over the business sales ledger, and the arrangement is confidential one from the customer's perspective, but will only become obvious in case of default made by the customer. Now, what happened in invoice discounting is that the administration, the invoicing, the follow-up, everything is done by us, the business, or by you. In this case, the invoice discounter, what happens is that invoice discounter arrangements that our business is availing will only become obvious if the customer is acting or moving towards the default, or has shown significant signs of default, or has actually defaulted. The thing over here is that it has got the benefits of a factor, but does not have the disadvantages of the factors, that because one of the main disadvantages we just learned from factoring is the loss of goodwill, which is also a big if, that is the loss of goodwill that business experience with a factor arrangement. So there are a number of steps of invoice discounting. Let's look at them. Once the sales deal is finalized by us, the business, with the customer, the business then sends invoices and reminders to customers which is unaware of the invoice discounting services the business is availing. So we are just following the normal procedure. A copy of invoice is sent to the invoice discounter, who advances 80% of the invoice value against the final charge, which is usually 3 to 4% above the base rate. Now, what happens if we send the invoice to the customer and also a copy sent to the invoice discounter? Invoice discounter immediately gives us the cash, which by looking at the invoice, that is the 80% amount is given to the business. And in terms of providing, and in return for providing this sort of finance, it requires an interest payment to be paid to him, and which is 3 to 4% above the base rate, which is LIBOR. The customer pays to the company in normal ways. The customer starts paying to the company in the bank account, which is not actually in control by the business, but is in control of the invoice discounter. Then we have got the invoice discounter pays the remaining amount of invoice after deducting finance and admin charges, which is 0.5% to 1%. It obviously there are some charges, extra charges for this arrangement, so it will charge that also. The finance company will require regular reports on sales ledger and credit control process to ensure its adequacy. So what happens over here is that not only we have to, you can say, manage our system, but we have also to report to the invoice discounters and them an arrangement that we are doing this sort of business, and this we are engaging in this sort of proposal, so they are aware of the business activities and associated risk. And the last option is credit insurance. Just like any other insurance, it provides us business against a defense against the bad debts. The company opting for credit insurance is required to submit credit proposals depending upon the assessment results. Whatever business engagement that we are having, we also have to send the proposals to the insurance companies so that they are aware of the businesses that we are doing too much of a risky, and they withdraw their insurance. So it's might of a hectic job over here, and certainly not preferable. Then we have got monitoring the credit system. If you remember correctly, I've drawn a flow chart in the last video, and monitoring the credit system is the last step in the flow chart of receivable management. Here what we do is keep an eye on the whole of the receivable management cycle, irrespective whether we are availing factoring or invoice discounting arrangements or credit insurance arrangement. Keep an eye, look for weaknesses, and then improve the efficiency according to the business dynamics. The position of account receivable should be reviewed regularly so that the corrective actions can be taken on time. This can be achieved by aging analysis. One of the most commonly used method over the receipt management is aging analysis, which will provide a list of outstanding debts and will assist in deciding which debt require prompt action. It's basically a list which shows us the outstanding debt holders. We will, from the news, credit agencies, and a number of from other sources, we can certain that these are the high risk customers with and it's important to recover money from them as soon as possible because they are in difficulty. So this sort of arrangement helps a lot in receivables management. Then we got the ratio analysis, will provide an indication about the trends in credit levels, changes in accounts receivable. We have already covered ratio analysis earlier. It also helps in receivables management, and we have also used in lots of examples that we have done. Then we have got credit utilization report, will indicate total credit limits utilized by the customers. Each customer is assigned different credit limit. We have learned that in the last video. Customers payment analysis will indicate breaches or attempted breaches of credit limit that requires prompt action. If the number of breaches is become frequent, it's important to relook at the agreements and arrangements with the customers. That's it for receivables management. Moving on to our next area, which is accounts payable. It represents money owed to suppliers. It is considered as a free source of finance. However, it has a cost in the form of adverse company goodwill. We all know what is payable. Payables is shown as a part of current liabilities in the statement of financial position. So what payable is actually a free source of finance. We obtain good credit terms from our suppliers that we will pay them in due time. If provided time, we can pay them later. As a result, we do not have to go to the bank for that time period to fund our working capital through overdraft. So that's a saving over there. However, too much utilization of this credit limit it might be perceived negatively by the suppliers and result in loss of goodwill. They will consider it as a customer who always pays late, and if they get an opportunity to do business with a competitor or another business, they might take their business over there if they do not want to continue with us. So there's an effect of adverse goodwill over here. An effective accounts payables will involve striking a balance between liquidity and profitability. Just like the elements of inventory and receivables, we need to strike a balance between liquidity and profitability here in accounts payables as well. Obtaining good credit terms from suppliers, that's one of the things that we need to do in payables management. In times of liquidity problem, extending the credit period without affecting the relationship with the suppliers, it's a good business gesture to keep a close business relationship with your suppliers because they are the source through which you obtain resources for the businesses. So in time of need, they will be able to help you in extending the credit period. And the last is evaluation of the option of obtaining early payment discounts. The formula is same as in the receivables, which is 1+% discount less percentage amount net of discount is to power number of periods, that's 1. Let's do that in an example. Let's do this example. First, let's have a look at the example of what we have got. A company will get a discount of 3% if payment is made within 20 days instead of 70 days. Calculate the annual savings of obtained discount. Return on deposit is 15% per annum. So now we will be computing it. We have already learned the formula, which is 1 plus percentage discount divided by percentage amount net of discount bracket close is to power number of periods and less 1. Now we need to do now is put the figures in it. Our discount that we are giving is 3%, and our if you deduct it from the 100%, we get the 97%. And the power is number of periods. So let's compute number of periods over here. There are 365 days in a year divided by net days. That is, if you look at that, that is 70 less 20. We have the net days over here, which is 50. Computing this, you get 7.3. So we have to take the net days over here so that we can get the number of periods. So it requires us because we need to do it annually, so we need to have the difference of what is the period of which we are obtaining the discount. So number of periods now becomes 7.3 less 1 multiplying with 100 will give us the answer in percentage. And the annual saving now, if we compute all this, becomes 25%. Return on deposit is 15%. Comparing 25% to 15%, we are obtaining more value, more benefit from obtaining discount rather than putting the funds in a bank. So this option should be opted. So that's how you compute for a benefit obtained from the discount. Moving on, coming back to our notes. Our next topic is foreign trade receivables and payables. First, we have got account receivables. Just like managing the account receivable at the local level, we have to manage account receivable at an international level. However, the documentation and risks that we are exposed to are quite high when it comes to international dealings. Let's look at them. Selling goods in the foreign countries requires an effective management of credit risk. As I just told you, we are exposed to greater amount of risk now. And recovery of receivables, exporters are subject to following problems. There are certain problems which the exporters face. These are complex documentation. They require certain things require a lot of documentation, especially if the product needs to be sent in a fragile manner. Then there will be more documentation for it. Then we've got increased investment tied in inventories and receivables, which have to be financed because the process of delivering goods through ships or planes requires a lot of time, and it's obvious because It's ideal for 2 to 3 months for a ship to reach its destination in an ideal scenario. So it's obvious that the goods which the importer will get will be in 2 to 3 months, and after that it will pay the exporter the amount which becomes due. So a lot of working capital is required when dealing with international transaction. The risk of delay in payment or bad debt due to insolvency of customers, unconvertible currencies, political risk, failure of bank. These are the number of risks which the business face. The risk of delay in payment or bad debt. If the client becomes bad debt or the payment is due from the client but the client is unwilling to pay us the money or requiring us to extend their credit, we are not much in a position of bargain over here because he is offshore, he is in a different country. We cannot just knock on his doorstep like we could have done at the local level. Then we have got insolvency of customers. The person you are exporting goods to becomes insolvent in a home country. It's easy to assess the viability of the clients and customers, but in an international level it becomes quite difficult because you do not know the market conditions over there, you do not know the many traders over there to obtain good references to the customers you are dealing with. Then we got unconvertible currencies. It might be that you receive order from a country and now you are willing to export to that country, but the currencies are not convertible in your local currency. You are not provided with the convertible rate for that currency. Then we've got political risk. Suddenly the condition between the countries becomes hostile and they have put a ban or an obstruction on the import and export of goods between them. As a result, your goods will be stuck there for quite some time before the pressure eases, and that's one of the reasons working capital requirement in receivable is quite high. The cash cycle is quite lengthy. Then we got failure of the bank. Even if all of this is taken into account, you are sending goods to another country with the help of a bank. You have opened up the documentation, the bank has corresponded with the bank of that country, they have opened the LC and everything is good. Even then there is a risk that since you do not know the conditions of the banks over there, if they get liquidated, if they become insolvent, or if the bank fails to deliver, simply put, because of certain reason, then you have no choice but to wipe that as a bad debt from your accounts. Then we got foreign exchange risks. The solution to this is hedging. We'll be covering them and we will be dealing with hedging. Then we have got ways of reducing foreign currency credit risk. We have got general policies which we can implement internally. That is, firstly, assessing the creditworthiness of the customer, proper documentation of sales, shipping and delivery, proper chaser procedures. Once the payment becomes due, you can always email them or call them. Then we have got the goods should be released once payment has been made or against negotiable instrument. That is, they have opened an LC and only then you send the goods to the customer. LC stands for letter of credit and is an instrument which we use for international transactions via bank. It acts as a security. We'll be discussing that later on. Next we have is bank as intermediaries. First we have got advance against collection. In this area what happens over here is that we sold our export invoice to the bank advances up to 80% of the amount to us and keeps at 100%. The risk and reward goes with the bank. Let's read it out. This is when banks are requested to handle the collection by the exporter on their behalf. The bank might also advance up to 80% of the receiver's value. Simple as that. Then we've got negotiable bills or check. They are same as above, just like the advance against collection. except for the difference is that they are payable outside the exporter's exporter's country. So that's how the check or negotiable bill work. They work outside the exporter's country. Then we've got discount bill of exchange. The bank buys the bills from the exporter but at a discount. In this case, in the last case, in the first point, the bank was managing us. It is advancing us the 80% of the amount, and once we receive the amount, it will give us the remaining amount as well, after deducting what it has already provided and charging a fees, of course, in between. In this case, the bank itself buys the bills from us, the exporter, at a discount. Obviously, it will not be buying the invoice at or on the same value. If it's for example $100,000, it will buy from us the bill which we have sent to the customer with, for example, 90,000 or 95,000, and earn a margin in between. Then we have got documentary credit. This is called LC, letter of credit. It provides 100% securities to exporter against the risk of bad debt. What happens over here, whenever we send receivable, in case of receivables, whenever we send goods, before sending the good, before loading the goods on the ship, we ask the importer to open an LC with their local bank. The bank of that country will corresponding with the bank of our country, and will have in this way banks have confidence in each other when it comes to international transactions, and that's why it becomes easy for the transactions to be carried out. So what happens over here is that bank corresponds with each other, and a document is issued to us over here that the importer has opened an LC. Then on that basis we load the goods on the ship and generate a bill of lading, which we will then give to the bank and obtain the funds. In this way, it's like the importer is paying us before the goods are even loaded on the ship. So that's how this works, and because of the bank's involvement at an international level, it's become quite secure. Then we've got export financing. The services offered by foreign factor company are same as the local factor services as discussed above. I've already discussed about factor financing. We have already done with the examples. So in the same way, factor financing is done at the international level as well. Then we have got export credit insurance. Private insurance companies will provide export credit insurance services which insure the company against the risk of bad debts against high premium. Obviously, international transactions, since they involve more risk, the insurance company will require greater premium to insure against that. Then we have got the limitations of foreign transactions that businesses face. Not all businesses can arrange documentary credit due to their small size. If it's a small product that is you are sending offshore, then it's obvious that you will not be opening up an LC for it, because the charges would not justify the value of the product. Then we have got those who can arrange it might face high cost and inflexibility. Only certain products are certain banks mostly they give they open up the LC on all the products that you are exporting. However, if there are certain products that require that, because of the legal exposure, the bank might not be willing to open up an LC for those products in that country. So that's why it becomes a hurdle over here. There's an inflexibility when it comes to opening up the LC, and obviously the LC requires a lot of high costs in the form of charges which we pay to the bank. So only LC is only feasible, letter of credit is only feasible when we are exporting a large amount of products over there in another country. Then we've got the needs for proper documentation might be cumbersome, or we need to open up the LC. For that there are a number of requirements. We need to create a bill of lading. For that we have to do a number of documents as well. So a lot of documentation is involved in exporting and importing goods. The sale should be in currency acceptable by both customers and seller. And one of the major clause in the international contract or international transaction is the currency on which they will trade. Normally people, irrespective of which country they are, they normally prefer to trade on dollars because it removes the risk of fluctuation to a greater extent. However, like all other currencies, it is exposed to foreign currency risks, which we will be dealing in the last chapter, second last chapter to be exact. Then we have got the last which topic of this area, which is foreign currency account payable. Companies that are regularly paying in foreign currencies face exchange rate risk. The solution to this is hedging. Again, we will be learning how to hedge the exposure of foreign currency risk through methods of hedging. We'll be learning it in the second last chapter of Forex. The only exposure when it comes to payables is the foreign currency risk. We'll be learning to deal with it over there. So that's it for this chapter of receivables and payables section of the working capital are now done. Let's keep it till here.